Bryan. Bryan deserves a mention or two of his own.
Yeah.
And again, I'm reading your book here. Let me hold this up because it is a beautiful read, and everybody ought to memorize this cover and go buy the thing.
Available on Amazon.
Available on Amazon, I'm sure.
Or at your independent bookshop. Barnes & Noble.
So the other fascinating parallel here that I'd like to, to the extent that it is a parallel, how far can we push this, is William Jennings Bryan, who seems to come out of nowhere, captures his party's nomination on the strength of one thrilling speech, and becomes, as far as I can tell, what we would recognize as the first modern populist. Now, here's what I want to say. Am I talking sense here? You've got William Jennings Bryan, populist in 1896. He runs for president 2 more times, defeated all 3 times, but there's a movement. There's something going on there. You see it again in Henry Wallace, who one of Franklin Roosevelt's vice presidents. He runs for president himself on the Progressive Party ticket in 1948, gets wiped out, but he represents something.
Yeah.
And then maybe even George McGovern, but of course the question I have is there something that we can see in William Jennings Bryan that we also recognize in Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Or is that ridiculous?
Well,
what do you think?
Yes, no, totally. First of all, you're absolutely right. He wins the Democratic nomination on the basis of a speech which itself is the result of 7 accidents occurring in the days leading into it. Any one of which, if any one of these 7 moments, some of which are trivial in nature, had gone a different direction, he would not have been able to give that speech and galvanize the convention. For example, one of the moments is that on the first day of the convention, he's considered to be temporary chairman. But people say, you know, he's not a delegate yet. Nebraska's delegation is under protest. We've seated provisionally the gold delegates from Nebraska. He's a silver man. He can't be considered for temporary chairman because he's not a delegate yet. And if he had been, he might have been elected temporary chairman and unable to give that speech. The final accident occurs 15 minutes before he gives the speech. And without that accident taking place, he would not have given that speech and might not have uttered those famous lines of about the cross of gold. But yes, look, he represents 2 strains that we see in this election, in my opinion.
In the current election.
In the current election. He is, first of all, an economic populist. He is Bernie Sanders only at the age of 36. 74-year-old Bernie Sanders and 36-year-old William Jennings Bryan sound the same. The man at the top is getting rich, you're getting poor. You know, the system is rigged against you. In Bryan's case, it was the money power of Lombard Street, the British Wall Street, and the idle capital holders of Wall Street. Remember, we're a developing country in 1896, so our economy goes. Think about Brazil, India today. We go only in 1896 because we got foreigners investing in our country.
Right.
But he is angry at that. He also represented cultural populism, which is not Bernie Sanders, it's Donald Trump. The America you see in front of us is changing dramatically. All the old familiar touchstones are changing because we're becoming a rapidly industrializing country, no longer agrarian in nature, and we are a rapidly diversifying population. Before 1896, actually before the Civil War and shortly thereafter, we were a country of immigrants, but they came from familiar places.
Right.
Germany, United Kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Northern Europe. Afterwards, they now start coming from Central Europe and Southern Europe, and he is representing a strain that says, you know what, that threatens us. He in his Cross of Gold speech, remember, he says, if your great cities are burned to the ground and you leave our farms alone, the cities will spring up again. But if our farms are raised, those cities, the grass will grow in their streets. And when he leaves Lincoln, Nebraska to go accept the Democratic nomination in New York City in early August, he says at the train depot in Lincoln, I go into the enemy's country, meaning that, you know, the rural agrarian west and south versus the urban and industrializing Midwest and East.